I never thought my life would become a romance novel, but the universe had other plans. The moment my father announced I'd be marrying a simple man from the neighborhood, someone quiet, unassuming, who worked at a local garage, I felt my world crumble. My dreams of falling in love naturally, of choosing my own path, vanished in a single conversation over dinner. My mother nodded along, her eyes avoiding mine, while my siblings exchanged uncomfortable glances. This was happening, whether I wanted it or not. The wedding was small, almost painfully modest. Marco stood at the altar in a simple black suit, his dark hair neatly combed back, his expression unreadable. He was handsome, I couldn't deny that. Sharp jawline, deep brown eyes that seemed to hold secrets I couldn't begin to unravel. But handsome didn't matter when your entire future was being decided for you. As I walked down the aisle, each step felt like walking toward a prison sentence. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, Marco's lips barely brushed mine, a gesture so cold and formal it sent a shiver down my spine. The reception was awkward, filled with relatives I barely knew, congratulating me on a marriage I hadn't chosen. Marco barely spoke, standing beside me like a statue, his presence both comforting and terrifying. I caught glimpses of men in expensive suits hovering near him, whispering in his ear, their eyes scanning the room with an intensity that made my stomach turn. Who were these people? Why did they treat my simple husband with such deference? If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps me bring you more stories like this. Our first night together was nothing like I'd imagined a wedding night would be. Marco drove us to a penthouse apartment in the city, not the modest home I'd expected. The elevator ride was silent, tension crackling between us like electricity. When we entered the apartment, I was struck by its luxury. Marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that screamed wealth. "Marco, what is this place?" I asked, my voice trembling. He turned to me, his expression softening for the first time. "This is our home, Elena. There are things about me you don't know yet, things I couldn't tell you before." My heart pounded as I stared at him, confusion and fear swirling inside me. "What do you mean?" "My father said you worked at a garage." Marco's jaw tightened, and he walked to the window, his silhouette framed against the glittering city lights. "I do work there sometimes. It's a cover, Elena. My real name is Marco Valentino, and I'm the heir to the Valentino crime family, one of the most feared families on the East Coast." The words hit me like a physical blow. Crime family, Mafia, Heir. My legs nearly gave out, and I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. "You're telling me I married a criminal?" My voice came out as a whisper, disbelief choking me. Marco turned, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "I'm telling you that you married a man who never asked for this life but was born into it. A man who's spent his entire existence trying to protect the people he cares about, even if it means getting his hands dirty." I didn't know whether to scream, cry, or run. Every instinct told me to bolt for the door, to call my father and demand an explanation. But something in Marco's eyes held me in place. A vulnerability, a weariness that spoke of years carrying burdens too heavy for one person. "Why didn't you tell me?" I finally managed, my voice breaking. "Because arranged marriages in my world aren't about love, Elena. They're about alliances, protection. Your father owed a debt to my family. This marriage settled it and keeps you safe from people who would have used you to get to him." The revelation shattered everything I thought I knew. My father had gambled away our family's security, and I was the payment. Anger boiled inside me, hot and fierce. "So I'm just a transaction? A piece on your chessboard?" Marco crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping just inches from me. "No, you were supposed to be a transaction, but the moment I saw you, something changed. I've spent weeks watching you from a distance, making sure you were safe before the wedding. You have no idea how many times I wanted to call it off, to spare you from this life." His confession caught me off guard, and for the first time since the ceremony, I saw him as more than just the stranger I'd been forced to marry. There was pain in his eyes, a loneliness that mirrored my own. "If you wanted to spare me, you should have let me go," I said, though my voice lacked conviction. Marco's hand reached up, hesitating before gently tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "I couldn't, because the people who want to hurt my family don't care about sparing innocence. As my wife, you have my protection. Without it, you'd be a target." The weight of his words settled over me like a heavy blanket. I was trapped, but not in the way I'd initially thought. This wasn't just about my father's debt or Marco's criminal empire. It was about survival. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice small. Marco's expression softened, and for a moment, I saw a glimpse of the man beneath the Mafia air. "Now we figure this out together. I won't force you to love me, Elena, but I will keep you safe. And maybe, in time, you'll see that I'm not the monster you think I am." The first week of marriage was a study in contradictions. Marco left early every morning, dressed in expensive suits that made my simple mechanic story seem laughable in hindsight. He returned late, often with tension etched into his features, but he always checked on me first thing. "Did you eat?" he'd ask. "Do you need anything?" His concern felt genuine, which only confused me more. How could a man involved in organized crime show such tenderness? I spent my days exploring the penthouse, discovering pieces of Marco's life hidden in plain sight. A bookshelf filled with classic literature, Dante, Hemingway, Garcia Marquez, a record player with a collection of jazz and blues albums, a framed photograph of a woman who looked like him, her smile warm and kind. "That's my mother." Marco's voice startled me one evening. I hadn't heard him come in. "She passed when I was 16. Cancer." I set the photograph down carefully, feeling like I'd intruded on something sacred. "I'm sorry." Marco shrugged, but I could see the pain flickering across his face. She was the only person who ever made me believe I could be something other than what my father wanted. She used to say that a good heart could survive even in darkness. He looked at me then, his eyes searching mine. I've tried to remember that, even when things get ugly. His vulnerability disarmed me, chipping away at the walls I'd built since our wedding. "What does your father want you to be?" I asked, curiosity overcoming caution. Marco's expression hardened. "A weapon. Someone who rules through fear, who doesn't hesitate to destroy anyone who threatens our interests. He wants me to be ruthless, to see people as pawns." He paused, his voice dropping. "But I've seen what that kind of power does to people. It hollows them out until there's nothing left but paranoia and cruelty." I moved closer to him, drawn by an impulse I didn't fully understand. "Then don't become that. You said your mother believed you could be different. Prove her right." Marco's eyes widened slightly, as if my words had struck something deep within him. "It's not that simple, Elena. In my world, showing mercy is seen as weakness, and weakness gets people killed." The rawness in his voice made my chest ache. Without thinking, I reached out and took his hand. "Then maybe you need someone to remind you that being human isn't weakness." For a long moment, we stood there, hands intertwined, the city lights casting shadows across his face. Then Marco pulled me closer, his other hand cupping my cheek with surprising gentleness. "You're not what I expected," he murmured. "I thought you'd hate me." I let out a shaky breath. "I'm still figuring out what I feel. But I don't hate you, Marco. I hate the situation, the lies, the fact that I didn't get to choose. But you're more complicated than I thought." A small smile tugged at his lips, the first real smile I'd seen from him. "Complicated. I'll take that as a compliment." The moment stretched between us, charged with something I wasn't ready to name. Then his phone buzzed, shattering the intimacy. Marco glanced at the screen, and his expression shifted instantly, back to the controlled, dangerous man who ran a criminal empire. "I have to go. There's a situation." He released me, and the absence of his warmth left me cold. "What kind of situation?" I asked, fear creeping into my voice. Marco hesitated, then decided on honesty. "A rival family is making moves on our territory. It's nothing you need to worry about, but I need to handle it." He moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at me. "Lock the door after I leave. Don't open it for anyone except me. And Elena?" I met his gaze. "If anything happens, there's a number programmed into your phone under Alex. He's my most trusted man. He'll get you somewhere safe." The seriousness in his tone made my blood run cold. "Marco, what aren't you telling me?" He returned to me, taking my face in both hands, his touch desperate. "I'm telling you that I will burn down half this city before I let anyone hurt you. You're mine now, Elena, and I protect what's mine." Then he kissed me, hard and possessive, a kiss that promised both danger and devotion. When he pulled away, I was breathless, my heart racing. "Stay safe," he whispered, and then he was gone. I locked the door as instructed, my hands shaking. The penthouse, which had begun to feel less like a cage, suddenly felt isolated and vulnerable. I paced the living room, trying to distract myself with television, with music, with anything that would keep my mind from imagining Marco in danger. Hours crawled by, each minute stretching into eternity. Around midnight, I heard voices in the hallway, low, angry voices that made my pulse spike. I grabbed my phone, my finger hovering over the number Marco had mentioned, when I heard his voice. I don't care what he offered. Tell Castellano that if he crosses into Valentino territory again, it won't be a warning next time. The door opened, and Marco stepped inside, his suit jacket gone, his white shirt stained with what looked like blood. My breath caught. "Are you hurt?" I rushed to him, my hands frantically searching for wounds. Marco caught my wrists gently. "It's not my blood." Relief and horror warred inside me. Relief that he was okay. Horror at what that statement implied. "Marco." He silenced me with another kiss, this one desperate, almost frantic. "I need you to understand something, Elena. This is my life. Blood, violence, impossible choices, and I would understand if you can't accept that. But I need you to know that everything I do, every terrible thing, it's to keep the people I care about safe, including you." I stared at him. This man who was both my husband and a stranger, someone capable of violence and tenderness in equal measure. "I don't know if I can accept it," I admitted, "but I'm trying to understand. And I was terrified something would happen to you tonight." Marco's eyes softened, and he pulled me against his chest, his heart beating steadily beneath my ear. "I'm not going anywhere, Elena. I promise you that." The next morning I woke to find Marco's side of the bed empty, the sheets cold. He'd insisted we share a bed after the previous night's scare, and though I'd been nervous, his presence had been oddly comforting. I found him in the kitchen, cooking breakfast with a domesticity that seemed absurd, given what I'd learned about him. "You cook?" I asked, unable to hide my surprise. He glanced over his shoulder with a smirk. "My mother made sure I knew how to take care of myself. Said a man who can't feed himself is useless." I slid onto a bar stool, watching him move around the kitchen with practiced ease. "French toast and bacon," he announced, placing a plate in front of me. "Thank you." We ate in comfortable silence, and I found myself studying him, the way his hair fell across his forehead, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the tattoos peeking out from beneath his rolled-up sleeves. "What do the tattoos mean?" I asked. Marco glanced down at his arms. Each one represents something. A promise, a loss, a reminder of who I am. He rolled up his right sleeve fully, revealing an intricate design of a phoenix rising from flames. "This one is for my mother. She always said that no matter how many times life tried to burn me down, I could rise again." His finger traced a series of Roman numerals on his other arm. "These are the dates I lost people I cared about. 5 men who died protecting my family. I wear their dates so I never forget the cost of this life." The intimacy of the moment, of him sharing these pieces of himself, made my chest tighten. "Why are you telling me this?" Marco set down his fork, his eyes meeting mine with unwavering intensity. "Because I want you to know me, Elena. The real me, not just the Mafia heir everyone fears. If we're going to make this marriage work, even if it started wrong, I need you to see all of me, the good and the ugly." Before I could respond, his phone rang. Marco answered with a clipped, "What?" His expression darkened as he listened. "How many?" A pause. "Get them to the warehouse. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up, already moving toward the bedroom to change. What happened? I followed him, anxiety creeping up my spine. 3 of our shipments were hijacked. Castellano's making his move. He pulled on a black shirt and shoulder holster, checking his gun with efficient precision. The sight of the weapon made everything feel too real. "Please be careful," I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Marco paused, turning to face me. "I always am." He crossed to me, cupping my face gently. "I have something to come home to now." The kiss he pressed to my forehead felt like a promise and a goodbye all at once. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with my spiraling thoughts and the breakfast growing cold on the counter. I tried to distract myself, but nothing worked. I couldn't focus on books, couldn't stomach television, couldn't do anything but pace and worry. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I froze, remembering Marco's warning not to open the door. I crept to the peephole and saw a well-dressed man with kind eyes. "Mrs. Valentino, I'm Alex. Marco asked me to check on you." The name matched what Marco had told me. I opened the door cautiously, keeping the chain lock engaged. "Can you prove you're Alex?" The man smiled, pulling out his phone and calling a number. My phone rang. Marco's number. I answered. "Elena, it's me. Alex is there to stay with you until I get back. Let him in." Relief flooded through me. "Okay." I hung up and opened the door fully. Alex stepped inside, his eyes immediately scanning the penthouse with professional assessment. "Has anyone else tried to contact you?" I shook my head. "Good. Marco wants to make sure you're protected. Things are escalating." "What does that mean?" I asked, fear creeping into my voice. Alex's expression was sympathetic. "It means the Castellano family isn't backing down. They see Marco as a threat. He's younger, smarter, and his methods are different from his father's. They want to take him out before he fully takes over the family." The words felt like ice water in my veins. "Are you saying someone might try to kill him?" Alex hesitated, then nodded. "It's a possibility, but Marco's prepared. He's one of the best strategists I've ever seen." The hours dragged on, with Alex maintaining a silent vigil by the door, while I wore a path in the carpet with my pacing. Every sound made me jump. Every buzz of my phone sent my heart racing. Finally, around 7 p.m., I heard Marco's voice in the hallway. I rushed to the door as he entered, looking exhausted but unharmed. "Thank God," I breathed, throwing my arms around him without thinking. Marco stiffened in surprise, then wrapped his arms around me tightly. "I'm okay," he murmured into my hair. "Everything's okay." But I could feel the tension in his body, the weight of whatever had happened pressing down on him. Alex nodded at Marco and quietly left, giving us privacy. I pulled back to look at Marco's face, seeing the weariness etched there. "What happened?" Marco sighed, leading me to the couch. I gave Castellano an ultimatum. Back off or face war. He has 48 hours to decide. "And if he chooses war?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Marco's jaw tightened. "Then I do what I have to do to protect my family and everyone under our protection, including you." The determination in his voice was both reassuring and terrifying. I took his hand, squeezing it tightly. "I don't want you to get hurt." Marco's expression softened, and he lifted our joined hands to his lips, kissing my knuckles. "I don't plan on it. I have too much to lose now." The tension of the next 2 days was suffocating. Marco barely slept, spending most nights on his laptop or phone, coordinating with his men and preparing for whatever Castellano decided. I found myself unable to leave his side, drawn by a need to be near him that I didn't fully understand. We'd evolved from strangers forced into marriage to something more complicated, two people finding solace in each other amidst chaos. On the second night, as the deadline approached, Marco found me on the balcony, staring out at the city lights. "Can't sleep?" he asked, joining me. I shook my head, too worried. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "I never wanted this for you. When I agreed to the arrangement, I told myself I'd keep you at arm's length, that it would be easier for both of us. But you've gotten under my skin, Elena." I turned to face him, my heart pounding. "What are you saying?" Marco reached out, his fingers tracing the line of my jaw with heartbreaking gentleness. "I'm saying that somewhere between the wedding and now, this stopped being just an arrangement for me. I care about you. More than I should, more than is probably smart. But I can't help it." His confession struck something deep within me, unlocking feelings I'd been trying to suppress. "I care about you too," I admitted, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. "I didn't want to. I tried not to. But when you're gone, all I do is worry. When you come home, I feel like I can breathe again. I don't know when it happened, but somewhere along the way, you became important to me." Marco's eyes darkened with emotion, and he pulled me against him, his lips finding mine in a kiss that was nothing like the others. This one was slow, deep, filled with promise and longing. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, Marco rested his forehead against mine. "After this is over, after Castellano is dealt with, I want us to start over. A real marriage, based on choice, not obligation. I want to court you properly, take you on dates, let you fall in love with me the right way." Tears pricked my eyes. I'd like that. We stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, the city sprawling below us, both knowing that the next few hours would determine everything. At midnight, Marco's phone rang. I watched as his expression shifted from guarded to surprised, to something that looked like relief. "Understood." Agreed. He hung up and turned to me with a genuine smile. Castellano backed down. He's withdrawing his challenge and agreeing to honor the original territory agreements. The relief that flooded through me was so intense I nearly collapsed. It's over? Marco pulled me close. For now, yes. He knows I was prepared to go all the way, and he doesn't have the resources to win that fight. The celebration was quiet, just the two of us in the penthouse, finally able to breathe without the weight of impending violence hanging over us. Marco opened a bottle of wine, and we sat on the couch, my head on his shoulder, his arm around me. Tell me about your dreams, he said suddenly. Before all this happened, what did you want out of life? I thought for a moment. I wanted to be a teacher, to help kids who came from difficult backgrounds find a way forward. Marco was quiet, processing this. That's still possible, you know. Being my wife doesn't mean giving up your dreams. If anything, I can make sure you have every resource to achieve them. I looked up at him, searching his face for signs of insincerity but finding none. You'd support that? He nodded. Elena, I don't want to cage you. I want to be the person who helps you fly. Part of being different from my father means not treating the people I love like possessions. The word love hung between us, neither of us ready to fully claim it yet, but both feeling its presence. What about you? I asked. What are your dreams, Marco? He considered the question seriously. I dream of transforming the family business into something legitimate. It'll take years, maybe decades, but I want to find a way to move our operations away from violence and into legal enterprises. My father thinks I'm naive, but I believe it's possible. His vision surprised me, revealing a depth of character I hadn't expected. That's ambitious. Marco laughed softly. That's one word for it. Suicidal is another. But with the right strategy and the right people beside me, I think I can do it. He looked at me meaningfully. Having you here, believing in me, it makes it seem less impossible. I squeezed his hand. Then I'll keep believing. For both of us. The rest of the night passed in quiet conversation and stolen kisses, the barriers between us crumbling with each shared secret and gentle touch. When we finally went to bed, Marco pulled me against him, and for the first time since our forced wedding, I felt truly safe. Not because of his power or his protection, but because I was beginning to trust the man beneath the Mafia Heir exterior, a man with a good heart, trying to survive in darkness. True to his word, Marco began courting me. Despite still being married, he treated every day like we were dating for the first time. I'd wake to find flowers on the kitchen counter with handwritten notes. Your smile is my favorite part of the day. Thank you for giving me a chance. I'm falling more every moment. The gestures were sweet and unexpected, gradually melting the last of my resistance. Our first real date was to a small Italian restaurant in a neighborhood I didn't recognize. Marco had reserved the entire place, and we ate by candlelight, while a violinist played softly in the corner. This is beautiful, I said, looking around at the intimate setting. Marco smiled, reaching across the table to take my hand. I wanted our first proper date to be memorable, somewhere we could talk without worrying about who might be watching or listening. Over plates of homemade pasta and glasses of red wine, we talked about everything: childhood memories, favorite books, embarrassing moments, hopes for the future. I learned that Marco had wanted to be an architect before his father forced him into the family business, that he spoke 4 languages fluently, that he had an irrational fear of spiders despite facing down armed men without flinching. Each revelation made him more real, more human, more impossibly endearing. Tell me about your family, I said, realizing how little I knew about the people who'd orchestrated my father's debt and our marriage. Marco's expression grew complicated. My father, Salvatore, is old school. He believes in ruling through fear and maintaining power at any cost. We've never had an easy relationship. He thinks I'm too soft, too idealistic. My sister Gianna lives in Italy. She got out years ago, married a banker, has 2 kids. She's the lucky one. Do you resent her for leaving? I asked gently. Marco shook his head. No, I'm glad she escaped. Someone in our family deserves a normal life. The sadness in his voice made my chest ache. You deserve that too, Marco. He looked at me with such intensity it took my breath away. Maybe I'm starting to believe I can have it. With you. The sincerity in his words made warmth bloom in my chest, pushing aside the last remnants of doubt. After dinner, Marco took me dancing at a jazz club. I'd never seen him so relaxed, moving with confident grace as he spun me around the dance floor. You're good at this, I said, laughing as he dipped me dramatically. My mother insisted I learn. She said a gentleman should know how to dance. He pulled me close, our bodies pressed together as we swayed to the music. I'm glad she did. This might be my new favorite thing. The drive home was quiet, both of us content in the comfortable silence that had developed between us. But when we pulled up to the building, Marco's entire demeanor changed. "Stay in the car," he ordered, his voice sharp. I followed his gaze and saw 3 men loitering near the entrance, men who didn't belong there. Marco pulled out his phone, making a quick call. "We have visitors. Send backup." Within minutes, 2 black SUVs appeared, and Marco's men surrounded the strangers. I watched from the car as Marco approached them, his posture commanding and dangerous. Words were exchanged that I couldn't hear, but the tension was palpable. Finally, the strangers left, shooting venomous looks back at Marco. He returned to the car, his jaw tight. "Who were they?" I asked as we drove to the underground parking. "Castellano's men. Seems he's having second thoughts about our agreement." Marco's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. "They were watching the building, probably trying to gather information about you." Fear spiked through me. "What does that mean?" Marco parked and turned to face me, his expression serious. "It means I need to increase security. From now on, Alex or another one of my men will be with you whenever you leave the penthouse. I know you value your independence, and I'm sorry, but I can't risk your safety." Part of me wanted to argue, to resist the loss of freedom, but the fear in Marco's eyes stopped me. "Okay," I agreed. "Whatever it takes." That night, Marco held me tighter than usual, his body tense even in sleep. I lay awake, listening to his breathing, realizing how completely my life had changed. 2 months ago, I was a normal woman with normal problems. Now I was married to a Mafia heir, caught in a dangerous world of territorial disputes and power struggles. But despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, I couldn't imagine being anywhere else. Marco had become my anchor, and I was his. 2 people finding something real in the midst of chaos. The increased security became my new normal. Alex became a constant presence, polite but vigilant, always scanning our surroundings for threats. At first it felt suffocating, but I gradually appreciated the safety it provided. Marco had become increasingly protective, calling multiple times a day to check on me, his worry evident even when he tried to hide it. The pressure was taking its toll on him. I could see it in the dark circles under his eyes, the tension he carried in his shoulders. One evening, I found him in his office, surrounded by papers and looking utterly exhausted. "Marco, when was the last time you slept properly?" He glanced up, attempting a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'll sleep when this is over." I crossed the room and gently closed his laptop. "No, you'll sleep now. Whatever crisis you're managing can wait a few hours." Marco opened his mouth to argue, but I cut him off. "I'm serious. You're running yourself into the ground, and that doesn't help anyone." He stared at me for a long moment. Then the fight seemed to drain out of him. "You're right." I took his hand and led him to the bedroom. "Lie down." Marco did as instructed, and I lay beside him, my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "Thank you," he murmured, his arms wrapping around me. "For what?" I asked. "For caring, for seeing me, for making this life bearable." His voice was thick with emotion, and I felt him press a kiss to the top of my head. We lay there in comfortable silence until his breathing evened out, and I knew he'd fallen asleep. I carefully extracted myself and returned to his office, curiosity drawing me to the papers he'd been studying. Financial documents, property records, business proposals, all legitimate ventures. He really was working toward his dream of transforming the family business. Pride swelled in my chest, mixed with admiration for this man who refused to become what his father wanted him to be. The next morning, I woke to Marco watching me, his expression soft. "Good morning," I whispered. "Good morning, beautiful." He kissed me gently, and I melted into him, the kiss deepening until we were both breathless. "I could get used to waking up like this," I said, when we finally broke apart. Marco smiled, the first genuine, relaxed smile I'd seen in days. So could I. In fact, I plan on it being our new routine for the next 50 or 60 years. His casual mention of a future together made my heart skip. 50 or 60 years? Marco's expression grew serious. "Elena, I know we started this wrong, but I meant what I said. I'm falling in love with you. Actually, I think I've already fallen, and I want forever with you if you'll have me." Tears pricked my eyes as I cupped his face. "I'm falling too, Marco. Faster than I ever thought possible. You terrify me and comfort me and make me feel things I've never felt before. Is that a yes to forever?" he asked, hope and vulnerability mingling in his eyes. "Yes," I breathed. "Yes, to forever." Marco kissed me again, this one filled with promise and passion, and I lost myself in the feeling of being completely loved and cherished. The world outside could be dangerous and unpredictable, but in that moment, wrapped in Marco's arms, I felt invincible. We'd found something real, something worth fighting for, something that transcended the circumstances that had brought us together. Later that day, Marco took me to meet his sister Gianna, who was visiting from Italy. She was beautiful and warm, embracing me like we were already family. "I'm so glad Marco found you," she said, squeezing my hands. "I've never seen him like this. Happy, hopeful. You're good for him." Over lunch at a seaside restaurant, Gianna shared stories about their childhood, painting a picture of a young Marco who loved building things and dreamed of designing skyscrapers. "Our father crushed those dreams," Gianna said, her expression sad. "He told Marco that Valentino men don't create. They take, they control, they dominate." It broke something in Marco, seeing his dreams dismissed like that. I glanced at Marco, who looked uncomfortable with the conversation. "But I'm working on rebuilding," he said quietly. "Elena's helping me remember that it's okay to want more than what I was given." Gianna's eyes welled with tears. "Mama would be so proud of you." The mention of their mother created a poignant moment, and I saw Marco blink back emotion. The rest of the lunch was lighter, filled with laughter and good-natured teasing. When we said goodbye, Gianna pulled me aside. "Take care of him, Elena. He acts tough, but he feels everything deeply. And don't let this life change who you are. Marco needs someone who can remind him there's beauty in the world beyond power and violence." I hugged her tightly. "I promise." On the drive home, Marco was quieter than usual. "Thank you for today," he said finally. "Gianna needed to see that I'm okay, that I found someone who makes this bearable." I squeezed his hand. "She loves you very much, and she's right. Your mother would be proud. You're fighting to be more than what your father demanded, and that takes incredible courage." Marco lifted my hand to his lips. "I couldn't do it without you. You're my strength, Elena. My reason for believing change is possible." Things remained relatively peaceful for the next few weeks, allowing Marco and me to settle into a routine that felt almost normal. He still left for work each day, managing both legitimate businesses and the less savory aspects of the Valentino empire, but he made sure to be home for dinner most nights. We cooked together, talked about our days, and slowly built the foundation of a real marriage based on mutual respect and growing love. But the peace was shattered one afternoon when I received a phone call from an unknown number. "Mrs. Valentino?" a gravelly voice asked. "Yes. Who is this?" My stomach knotted with instinct dread. "Someone who wants to make a deal. You see, your husband has something that belongs to my employer. We'd like it back." I gripped the phone tightly. "I don't know what you're talking about." The man laughed. A cold, menacing sound. "Then ask him about the Castellano shipment. We'll be in touch with instructions." The line went dead. My hands shook as I immediately called Marco. He answered on the first ring. "Elena, what's wrong?" I told him about the call, my voice trembling. Marco's curses were creative and violent. "I'm sending Alex to get you now. Pack a bag. We're moving you to a safe house until I sort this out." Within 20 minutes, Alex arrived, his expression grim. "Let's go, Mrs. Valentino." I grabbed essentials and followed him, my mind racing with questions and fears. The safe house was a nondescript building in a quiet suburb, far from the penthouse's luxury, but secure and well-guarded. Marco arrived an hour later, his face dark with rage. "I'm sorry," he said immediately, pulling me into his arms. "I thought I'd neutralized the threat. Castellano must have decided to escalate." I pulled back to look at him. What shipment were they talking about? Marco's jaw tightened. 3 weeks ago, my men intercepted a shipment of illegal weapons Castellano was bringing into the city. We destroyed them and sent a message that we wouldn't tolerate that kind of operation in our territory. "So this is retaliation," I said, understanding dawning. Marco nodded. "They can't get to me directly, so they're going after you. It's a classic tactic. Hurt the people I care about to make me vulnerable." The fact that I'd become a target because of my connection to Marco was terrifying, but I also felt a strange sense of determination. What do we do? Marco's eyes softened at my use of we. I deal with Castellano permanently. No more warnings, no more negotiations. He crossed a line by threatening you. The cold fury in Marco's voice reminded me that beneath his gentleness with me, he was still a dangerous man. What does that mean, permanently? I asked, though I already knew. Marco cupped my face gently. It means I'm going to make sure he can never threaten you or anyone else under my protection again. I'm sorry, Elena. I know this isn't the life you wanted. I surprised myself by saying, maybe not, but it's the life I have, and I'm not running from it. We face this together. Pride and love flashed across Marco's face. How did I get so lucky? He kissed me deeply, pouring all his emotion into the gesture. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. Stay here. Don't leave for any reason. I'll have 6 men posted around the clock. This will be over soon, I promise. I nodded, trusting him completely despite the fear coursing through me. Marco left after another lingering kiss, and I was alone with my guards and my spiraling thoughts. The next 24 hours were the longest of my life. I paced the safe house, unable to eat or focus on anything but worrying about Marco. Alex tried to reassure me, but even he seemed tense, frequently checking his phone and coordinating with the other guards. Night fell, and still no word. I was about to lose my mind when my phone finally rang. Elena. Marco's voice was weary but triumphant. It's over. Castellano won't be a problem anymore. What happened? I asked, relief flooding through me. Let's just say he's been persuaded to retire from the business. He's leaving the country and signing over his operations to a neutral party. If he ever sets foot in the United States again, it'll be the last decision he makes. The finality in Marco's tone told me there was more to the story, but I didn't push. Are you okay? Marco's voice softened. I am now. I'm coming to get you. We're going home. True to his word, Marco arrived within the hour. The moment I saw him, I ran into his arms, holding him tightly. I was so scared, I admitted. Marco stroked my hair soothingly. I know. I'm sorry I put you through that, but it's really over this time. Castellano won't dare come after us again. We drove back to the penthouse in silence, both exhausted but relieved. Once home, Marco led me to the bedroom, and we collapsed onto the bed, fully clothed, just holding each other. I love you, Marco said suddenly, the words clear and unequivocal. I know I've been dancing around it, but I need you to know. I love you, Elena. Completely. Irrevocably. Tears streamed down my face as I kissed him. I love you too, Marco. So much it scares me. He smiled against my lips. Good scary or bad scary? I laughed through my tears. Good scary. The kind that means I'm all in, no matter what comes next. We made love that night, not with the desperate passion of earlier encounters, but with tenderness and promise, sealing our commitment to each other in the most intimate way possible. Life gradually returned to a new version of normal. Marco's handling of the Castellano situation had sent a clear message throughout the criminal underworld. The Valentino family was not to be trifled with, especially when it came to Marco's wife. The respect and fear that Marco commanded had grown, but more importantly, his reputation for being strategic rather than needlessly violent had also solidified. He was carving out his own identity, separate from his father's brutal legacy. I decided to pursue my dream of teaching, enrolling in a credential program at a local university. Marco not only supported this decision but celebrated it, attending my first day with me despite having crucial business meetings. This is important, he insisted when I told him he didn't have to come. Your dreams are my priority. Having him there, proud and supportive, made me fall even more in love with him. My classmates had no idea who my husband was, and I preferred it that way, enjoying the normalcy of being just another student. My father reached out for the first time since the wedding, requesting a meeting. I agreed, though not without trepidation. We met at a cafe, and he looked older, worn down by guilt. Elena, I owe you an apology, he began. I failed you as a father. I gambled away everything and then gambled with your life to fix my mistakes. There's no excuse for what I did. I listened, feeling a complicated mix of anger and pity. You're right, there isn't. You took away my choice. I know, he said, tears in his eyes. If I could take it back, I would. But I need you to know that I researched the Valentino family before I agreed. I knew about Marco, that he was different from his father, that he had honor despite his profession. I was betting that he would treat you well, and it seems I was right. His words surprised me. You gambled again, with me as the stakes. My father nodded miserably, and I will regret it for the rest of my life. But I'm grateful that it worked out, that you seem happy? I considered his question. Was I happy? Despite everything, despite the circumstances that brought Marco and me together, I realized I was. Yes, I admitted. I'm happy, not because of how it started, but because of who Marco is. He's a good man trying to navigate an impossible world, and I love him. My father's relief was palpable. Then maybe something good came from my mistakes after all. I don't expect forgiveness, Elena, but I hope someday we can rebuild our relationship. I left the meeting with mixed feelings, but a sense of closure. When I told Marco about it that evening, he listened thoughtfully. How do you feel about seeing him? He asked. Confused, angry, but also ready to move forward. I can't change what happened, and holding on to bitterness only hurts me. Marco pulled me close. You're remarkable, you know that? Your capacity for forgiveness, your strength, it humbles me every day. I kissed him softly. You bring out the best in me, Marco. You make me want to be strong. As months passed, Marco made visible progress on his goal of legitimizing the family business. He'd successfully transitioned several operations into legal enterprises, real estate development, import-export companies with proper documentation, legitimate investment portfolios. His father was skeptical but couldn't argue with the increased profits and decreased legal scrutiny. You're doing what I always wanted to, Gianna told him during one of her visits. You're changing the family legacy. But not everyone was happy with Marco's reforms. Some of the old guard members of the Valentino organization resisted the changes, preferring the traditional violent methods. One evening, Marco came home with a split lip and bruised knuckles. What happened? I demanded, immediately getting ice. Antonio Russo happened, Marco said, wincing as I pressed ice to his lip. He challenged my leadership in front of the other capos, said I was making us weak, that my reforms would destroy the family. And, I prompted, gently cleaning his split knuckle, and I had to prove I'm still dangerous when I need to be. I can't just be the reformer. I also have to be strong enough that no one dares undermine me. The weight of his position, the impossible balance he had to maintain, was evident in his weary expression. Come here, I said, pulling him into the bathroom. I ran a hot bath, adding salts and oils, then helped him undress and sink into the water. I sat beside the tub, gently washing his back and shoulders, working out the tension in his muscles. You're amazing at this, Marco murmured, his eyes closed. At what? I asked. At making everything better. At reminding me why I'm fighting for change. At loving me even when I come home bloodied and bruised. I leaned forward and kissed his temple. That's what partners do. We take care of each other. You protect me from external threats. I protect you from internal ones. Stress, doubt, exhaustion. That night, as we lay in bed, Marco said, I've been thinking about the future, about what we want it to look like. I turned to face him, and he traced patterns on my arm absently. I want kids someday, a family that isn't built on fear and violence. I want to give them the childhood I never had, full of love and choices and possibilities. But only if you want that too. I know this life is complicated, and bringing children into it would be a huge decision. My heart swelled at the vulnerability in his voice, at him trusting me with these deep desires. I want that too, I said softly. Not right now. I want to finish my credential program first, and you need more time to secure the reforms. But yes, Marco, I want to build a family with you. The smile that spread across his face was pure joy, and he kissed me deeply. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person, he whispered against my lips. 2 years after our arranged marriage began, Marco and I renewed our vows in a ceremony of our own choosing. This time, there were no forced obligations or hidden identities, just two people who had found love in the most unlikely circumstances, surrounded by friends and family who genuinely celebrated our union. Gianna served as my maid of honor, tears streaming down her face as I walked down the aisle toward Marco, who looked at me like I was his entire world. 2 years ago, I thought my life was over, I said during my vows, my voice steady despite the emotion. I thought I was being traded like property, married off to a stranger, but what I found instead was a partner who challenges me, protects me, and loves me with a fierceness that takes my breath away. Marco, you've shown me that strength isn't about violence or control. It's about choosing kindness when cruelty would be easier. It's about fighting for your dreams when the world tells you to give up. I love the man you are and the man you're becoming. I choose you, today and every day, for the rest of our lives. Marco's vows were equally emotional. Elena, you walked into my life when I needed you most. Even though neither of us knew it, you saw past the Mafia Heir, past the reputation and the violence, and you saw me, the man trying to be better, to build something meaningful. You believed in me when I struggled to believe in myself. You've been my conscience, my strength, my home. I promise to spend the rest of my life earning the gift of your love. I promise to protect not just your safety, but your dreams, your joy, your freedom to be exactly who you are. I love you infinitely. The reception was joyful, a stark contrast to our first wedding's awkward tension. I danced with my father, who continued working to rebuild our relationship, and I saw genuine happiness in his eyes. He's a good man, my father said, nodding toward Marco, who was talking with Gianna's husband. I'm glad I was right about that, at least. I squeezed his hand. We're getting there, Dad. Slowly, but we're getting there. My father kissed my forehead. That's all I can ask for. Later, Marco pulled me onto the dance floor for our first dance as a properly married couple. Happy? He murmured as we swayed to the music. Incredibly, I replied, resting my head on his shoulder. Who would have thought our disaster of a beginning would lead here? Marco chuckled. I think maybe fate knew what we needed even when we didn't. Sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected places. I looked up at him, this man who had been a stranger, then an obligation, then a friend, and finally the love of my life. I wouldn't change anything. Every hard moment, every challenge, it all brought us here. The years that followed were filled with both challenges and triumphs. Marco successfully transitioned 60% of the Valentino operations into legitimate businesses, reducing the family's criminal activities to a fraction of what they'd been. He faced opposition and threats, but with me by his side and his loyal team supporting him, he persevered. I graduated with my teaching credential and began working at an inner-city school, helping kids from difficult backgrounds, something that gave me profound purpose and satisfaction. We had our first child, a daughter we named Sophia after Marco's mother. Holding her for the first time, seeing Marco's tears of joy as he cradled his daughter, I knew we'd created something beautiful from the ashes of our complicated beginning. She's perfect, Marco whispered, his finger gently stroking Sophia's tiny hand. Just like her mother, the transformation was complete. The feared Mafia heir had become a devoted father, determined to give his children a different life. Antonio Russo, who had challenged Marco years earlier, eventually came around and became one of Marco's most trusted advisors in the legitimate businesses. He'd seen that Marco's methods, while different, were effective and profitable. You proved me wrong, boss, Antonio admitted one day. This new way, it's better, safer for everyone, more sustainable. Your mother would be proud. The acknowledgement from someone who had once opposed him meant everything to Marco. My father became a regular presence in our lives, a doting grandfather to Sophia, who had genuinely reformed his own behavior. He attended gambling addiction support groups and worked a modest job, rebuilding his life with humility and determination. Thank you for giving me another chance, he told me one evening as we watched Marco play with Sophia. Not everyone would. I smiled, watching my husband make silly faces to elicit baby giggles. We all deserve second chances. You taught me that, even if you didn't mean to. As I sat on our balcony one evening, Sophia sleeping peacefully in her nursery, and Marco beside me with his arm around my shoulders, I reflected on our journey. We'd started as strangers bound by obligation, survived threats and violence, and built something real and lasting. What are you thinking about? Marco asked, kissing my temple. About how wrong first impressions can be, about how the worst beginning led to the best life. Marco pulled me closer. No regrets? I looked up at him, at this man who had fought so hard to be better, to create a different legacy. Not a single one. The Mafia world that had once defined Marco's existence had become just one part of a much fuller life. He was a husband, a father, a legitimate businessman, and yes, still someone who commanded respect in circles that operated outside the law. But he'd proven that change was possible, that you could honor your family while also transforming it. And I'd proven that love could bloom even in the darkest circumstances, that choosing to see the good in people could lead to miracles. Our story wasn't a fairy tale. It was messy and complicated and real, but it was ours, built on trust and respect, and a love that had survived every test. As Marco and I watched the city lights twinkle below us, Sophia's soft breathing audible through the baby monitor, I knew that I would choose this life, choose this man, over and over again. Because sometimes the most unexpected beginnings lead to the most extraordinary endings. Thank you so much for reading our story. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, subscribe for more stories, and drop a comment telling me what you thought. Did the ending surprise you? I'd love to hear from you.